Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Volden. I'm the Director of the Office of International Education at the University of Denver. Welcome to the Accepted Study Abroad Students Parent and Supporter Resources Orientation. This orientation is meant to be a resource for you as your student continues their journey to study abroad. Right now, your student has been accepted to study abroad by the University of Denver. However, there are many other administrative and logistical steps required as they prepare for their time abroad. We hope this will answer initial questions that are on your mind or prompts questions for you or your student to follow up with our office. I'll be sharing a lot of information throughout this orientation, and here is a snapshot of the different agenda items I'll be speaking to. Remember, you can go back to any of these slides and hit the play button to hear the information being presented to you today. And I encourage you to visit our website or have your student reach out to their study abroad advisor with future questions they might have. The Office of International Education has more than 100 approved partner programs available to DU students. All of these programs have been vetted and approved by the University of Denver, both from the Office of International Education and the Internationalization Council. And all of these programs are independent operations from DU. These programs are offered in partnership with universities directly in international locations, as well as private organizations, what we call third-party program providers, that are offering educational experiences for study abroad programs. These programs run the gamut in terms of offering structure, support, and it's very important to understand that across these 100 programs, none of them are identical. The various types of programs have different styles of teaching, they have different structures of excursions, they have different types of on-site support, and your student's experience will not be the same as another student's experience on a different program. Your student's experience won't be the same experience as your own study abroad experience if you have studied abroad in the past. And this is very important for students and their supporters to understand, because the variety of offerings is vast and all of the experiences are different across these programs. All of your students have access to a study abroad handbook. This is an online Canvas course. Canvas is the University of Denver's learning management system software. And so through this Canvas course, we have developed a resource for all accepted study abroad students. It has a plethora of information across different topics, ranging from academics to travel arrangements to visa processes and many more topics. Once your student has been accepted to the study abroad program at DU, they have access to this study abroad handbook. And this resource is invaluable to them as they continue with their planning and preparation. I encourage your student to share the link to the handbook with you directly so you can see the topics and the information that is provided in the handbook. Your student has several different program contacts for their study abroad experience. I want to highlight a few of the distinct differences among these contacts so you and your students understand who is best to connect with for different types of questions. The first is the DU Study Abroad Advisor. This is an individual in the Office of International Education at DU who is the point of contact for a portfolio of different approved programs that we work with. This person is a general point of contact and can help your student understand what processes and policies are specific for the University of Denver, and can also speak generally about the program information abroad. The DU Study Abroad Program Advisor does not work for the program directly and therefore cannot give very specific, very detailed information. should you or your student have questions at a very detailed level. We help students navigate the processes, and we provide resources for the students to prepare for their program, but we don't do the work for the students. If your student asks a question that we may not have the answer for, we will direct them to contact the program directly. The program advisor is the staff person either at the university abroad or the staff person at the US-based organization. And this person will have more detailed information depending on the question, perhaps about housing questions, course registration questions, travel arrangement questions, arrival and departure times, for example. And so the program advisor is a second point of contact for your student. Again, this is a staff person either at the university abroad or perhaps a staff person at the organization based in the US. Understanding where this staff person is also important. It is not always possible to contact staff at a university abroad, depending on their own policies, depending on the cultural context of that university. Some universities do not communicate with parents and only communicate with accepted students or with staff from DU. And so it is important to understand the nuances of the culture that your student is studying or preparing to study abroad with, and know that the systems and the cultures and the processes may be vastly different than what we're used to here in the United States. We encourage and expect students to have an active and centered role in their own study abroad experience. We want them to take ownership of the process, we want them to balance and manage communication, and we want them to manage and navigate the information necessary to have a successful study abroad experience. All of the processes and requirements necessary for study abroad are communicated to students through their DU email. And so we expect students to read the emails and follow up as necessary to the information provided. We also expect students to be on top of timelines and requirements, whether this is for course registration processes or visa application processes. Students have to be prepared to navigate the various responsibilities for study abroad programs. We provide support and resources for all of these necessary steps, but it's crucial for students to have ownership and make sure that they're prepared to do this information, to do these steps and understand the information directly.
As mentioned previously, this orientation is for students who have been accepted by the University of Denver. Students must first apply through the Office of International Education. We review their eligibility and we approve them for the DU requirements. However, depending on when you're watching this orientation, your student may still need to apply and be accepted to their program directly. All programs are different, so the application processes will be different across all programs. Your students have been given information on the program application through their DU Passport application portal. I'll speak more about DU Passport in the next slide. As mentioned earlier, all programs are different. The application processes, housing information, course registration, excursions, and styles of communication will vary greatly by the program and the country your student is studying abroad in. Your student must remember not to compare their requirements or processes to other students. All of these are different across the programs.
There are two important resources to know that your student has access to throughout their planning for study abroad. The first is their DU Passport portal. This image at the top of the slide shows a screenshot of DU Passport. This is your student's online application portal. It has a variety of information specific to their DU planning and also specific information for their program abroad, including academics, billing and finances, policies, student responsibility statements, and more. All students have access to this information, and the information in DU Passport is customized for their specific study abroad program. The DU Passport also has a timeline of materials that students are expected and required to complete by a certain deadline. The deadline is published in their DU Passport. So when your student might make a statement like, "I don't know what I need to be doing next," you can remind them to look at their DU Passport to make sure that they're up to date with the necessary steps and requirements. The Study Abroad Handbook is also a useful resource for your students as well as for you, and has a variety of information and topics available to them. The Study Abroad Handbook can be shared with you directly, so please ask your student to provide you with the link where you can access the information in the handbook. The information in DU Passport is split into pre-decision materials and post-decision materials. The pre-decision materials are all steps that students need to understand and agree to as part of their application process. Post-decision means after acceptance. And so the post-decision materials have information on how students can apply to their program directly. It has information about their immigration, health and safety information, diversity and inclusion information, and more. So it's important to remember that the Study Abroad Passport portal and the Study Abroad Handbook are important resources for your student throughout the process of their study abroad. Students studying abroad on DU partner programs or approved programs will receive DU credit for the courses taken abroad. Upon completion of the program will send an official transcript to the University of Denver, where it will be processed and posted to the student's DU academic record. Depending on the student's degree and graduation requirements, there may be specific steps the student has to complete in order to receive credit for specific requirement. This specific requirement could be a course abroad being counted as an elective credit, or a course taken abroad being counted as a major or minor credit at DU. When a student needs a class to meet a specific DU requirement, they must submit it for review and approval by the office to the Office of the Registrar. Instructions on how to do this are available in the Study Abroad Handbook and on our website, and students should be doing this right now. If there is a specific class that they need to take abroad to ensure that they stay on track for graduation, they should make sure that that class is approved before they register and participate in that class. We also want to share some considerations for academic differences your student might experience on their study abroad program. A lot of educational systems and cultures operate very differently than what we're used to in the United States. Many of them require much higher levels of independence from the student and are often more ambiguous than what we are used to here in the US. Oftentimes, students have very clear rules, very clear requirements that are outlined in their syllabus here at the University of Denver. They know exactly what the professors might require of them, how many specific points for specific assignments and participation. This is not the case in all study abroad programs, and this is an important consideration for students to consider as they're preparing for their experience abroad. Some programs might have course registration that occurs on site, and so guaranteeing course registration might happen at a much later point in time than what students are used to here at DU. Teaching styles and curriculum vary across cultures, and students are required to meet the expectation of their program and their host country. Some examples include professors having very different and very direct styles of communication abroad. Here in the US, often professors might be concerned about hurting students' feelings by giving direct feedback. A student should be prepared for faculty abroad to be very direct and not concerned about sensitivity in sharing feedback about assignments or participation. Grading can also be very different abroad, and many education systems grade a course based on maybe 1 or 2 assessments for the whole term. Here in the US, students are very used to a variety of different assignments and participation that culminate into their final grade. Oftentimes, this is not the case in other educational systems. And so there might be one final exam a student has to take, and that exam could be the majority of the grade they receive for that term. We have a variety of different information on our website at the website listed here.
All students participating in DU Partner programs will be billed through their DU student account. The timing of the billing will be based on DU's billing calendar. Please refer to the DU payment deadlines for planning. These can be found on the Bursar's website. If your student receives DU financial aid, this will be dispersed to their DU account in the same way it does for every other quarter. There are some exceptions to financial aid. Work-study awards are not applicable for study abroad programs. Also, students planning to use any VA benefits should consult immediately with their OIE study abroad advisor, as well as the VA certifying official at DU. VA benefits have many different requirements and may not be eligible for use for a DU partner program. DU operates a homeschool tuition study abroad program. This means that all students pay DU tuition instead of paying a program fee for study abroad. If your student is studying abroad for one term, for fall semester, for example, they will be billed 1/4 of DU tuition. Comparatively, students who study abroad for a full academic year will be billed for 3/4 of DU tuition. Many of our billing agreements with DU partners include housing. For these programs, students are charged DU housing fees. This is based on a double regular apartment, such as Nelson. However, there are some programs in which our billing agreement does not include housing. For these programs, students are required to pay the program directly for housing. Housing will not be included in the student's DU bill for these programs. This information is shared with students early spring quarter. For students participating in programs where a meal plan is included, or students living with host families where meals are provided, these students will also be charged a DU meal plan fee. More information can be found on the website listed here. It is important to understand that there are financial commitments for study abroad. Once a student has been accepted, they have agreed to the billing and withdrawal policies. This slide explains the significance of withdrawing from a program. All withdrawal deadlines and more information on withdrawal policies can be found on the website shown here. If a student chooses to withdraw from their study abroad program before the DU withdrawal deadline, DU is financially responsible for any program fees that have been paid. Students are responsible for any non-recoverable costs associated with CGS benefits already paid on the student's behalf, airfare and visa fees, regardless of the date of withdrawal. So, if your student has withdrawn from their program before the withdrawal deadline, but they have booked their flight using their CGS stipend, they will be required to repay that amount back to DU. If a student chooses to withdraw from a DU partner program after the DU withdrawal deadline and before the program begins, they are subject to a DU withdrawal fee of $1,000 or the total amount of non-recoverable costs charged by the program or host institution, whichever is higher. These non-recoverable costs are often housing deposits that have been paid or other costs that have been paid by the program directly for the preparation of the program's operations. Students are also responsible for any non-recoverable costs associated with CGS, so if they have booked their flight, they will be required to repay. If a student withdraws from a study abroad program after the program has started, the initial DU study abroad fee will remain on the student's account. A credit will be issued for any financial difference that can be recovered from the program abroad, if applicable. Typically, non-recoverable costs may include host tuition, housing, and meal fees for the term. DU is proud to award the Sherrington Global Scholar Benefit for study abroad. I will be referring to the Sherrington Benefit as CGS. There is no application for students to complete to be awarded CGS. The Office of International Education reviews students' eligibility each term, and we notify students directly by email if they are eligible to receive the CGS benefit. Eligibility requires a minimum 3.0 grade point average, junior class standing, or the completion of 90 credits, and a clear student conduct record. CGS awards a stipend amount for a round-trip flight for students, which is based on their program dates and program location. CGS also reimburses the cost of a student visa application if one is required by your student's study abroad country and study abroad program. To facilitate the flight booking, we work with the travel organization Student Universe. Student Universe creates stipend codes for each study abroad program. These codes are based on program dates and locations, and assigns each code to the eligible student. We share this information with students directly by email. Students are given instructions on how to book their flight using the Student Universe portal. If a student wishes to deviate from the program dates or location for their flights, and if this causes the flight to be more expensive than the stipend amount, students will be responsible for paying for this cost difference directly at the time of booking. An example of this is, let's say your student is studying abroad in New Zealand, and they have received a stipend code for the amount of $2,700 to fly to and from Denver to Auckland. However, your student will not be returning home to Denver from Auckland because they plan to travel to Australia once the program ends. Your student can still use their CGS stipend code for $2,700 to book their preferred flights. However, traveling to Australia will likely add additional cost to the airfare, in which your student will be required to pay for the difference directly once the stipend amount is used. It is important to understand the CGS benefit does not cover flight changes or interruptions. The CGS benefit does not cover seat upgrades. The stipend amount is a set amount good for one-time use. If your student wants to change their flight after they book their flight, they are responsible for all required change fees. International travel can often be bumpy and interrupted, with flight delays or lost luggage, for example. Understand that neither the University of Denver nor the Office of International Education are travel agents. If your student experiences inconvenience in their travel, such as a flight cancellation, they must work with either Student Universe or the airline directly to resolve the situation. There is nothing we can do to assist with flight rebookings, other than refer students to the Student Universe helpline. If housing is arranged on behalf of the program, your student is guaranteed housing accommodations. There are only a few programs where students are required to arrange their own housing. This information is available on your student's study abroad program brochure, or they can reach out to their advisor for more information. Housing varies greatly across different programs and across countries and across cultures. Depending on the program, students may live in a residence hall, either similar or very different to U.S. standards. They may live in a private apartment, or they may live with a host family. Each program is different. As mentioned earlier, the cost of housing and billing will be dependent upon our billing arrangement with the program. Students will either be charged the DU double apartment housing cost and charged through their DU account, or they will be responsible for paying for housing on their own to their program directly. Students and their supporters must have a realistic expectation of housing arrangements abroad. Housing will be different than what they are used to in the U.S. We have many conveniences available to us in the United States. We have cheap utilities and we have a lot of space compared to other parts of the world. Apartments abroad are often much more basic than what we are used to in the U.S., and they are likely to be much smaller than what we are used to. It is important for students to be adaptable and flexible to their new living arrangements and not expect the same comforts they have at home. In addition, the cost of gas, electricity, and water are often much more expensive in other countries. Because of this, your student may be asked to limit their utility use, as expected by locals in that country. If your student is living with a host family, they may experience this more directly, as many host parents limit the use of such appliances, such as limiting fan use and not allowing students to run a fan overnight, or asking students to shorten their shower time because of the significant cost of their utilities. If your student encounters any housing situation abroad that needs a resolution, it is important they contact their program contact in their country first. They should not be calling you about a housing problem before contacting their on-site coordinator. If they call you first about a problem, you are likely to call DU. We must then contact the program either in the U.S. or abroad, considering time zones and time of communication. This takes too much time, and if your student would contact the person on site, the resolution could be solved much more quickly. Your student should have a valid passport right now, and it should be valid for at least 6 months after their program ends. If your student does not have a valid passport right now, they need to apply for one immediately and have the application expedited. Many countries and programs will require students to apply for a student visa or a local residence permit. This is a government requirement mandated by the country your student is studying abroad in. Oftentimes, this process can be cumbersome, and unfortunately, it can be one of the more inconvenient parts of the study abroad process. Information on the visa process will be provided to your student directly by their program or university. The University of Denver and the Office of International Education are not visa officers, and we can only provide basic answers about any questions you or your student may have about the visa process. Each country will have a different process. If your student is studying abroad in France, but has friends studying abroad in Spain and Italy, all 3 students will have different requirements and be required to complete different processes. Students should not compare their requirements to students studying on different programs or in different countries. Some countries will require students to apply for their visa in person at a consulate or embassy in the United States. This may require your student to fly to another location in the U.S. to apply for their visa. This is inconvenient and costly, but it is the required process of that country's government. It is important to know that the CGS benefit does not cover the cost of flights for visa application requirements. Most importantly, your student must conduct and complete the visa process themselves. You, their parent or supporter, should not be doing the work for them. You cannot apply for the visa on your student's behalf, and you will not be receiving any information on the requirements or the process. Your student must be responsible in navigating and completing all of these processes. You can help and support, but please encourage your student to refer to the information provided to them by their program on what the requirements are and what processes are necessary to complete these important steps. While the Office of International Education shares information on approximate program dates, students must confirm the start and end dates of their term abroad with their program directly. They should not book any flights until they have confirmation of these dates. As a reminder, your student will be emailed information about CGS eligibility, as well as instructions on how to book their flights with Student Universe. This information is also available to students in their Study Abroad Handbook. If your student is planning to travel to other areas in their study abroad country or to other nearby countries, they should notify their on-site program staff about these plans. If traveling to another country, we also recommend students register their travel with the U.S. Embassy's STEP program, Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. This helps the U.S. Embassy contact your student in an emergency or helps you get in touch with them in the event of an emergency. Students' health and safety is our priority, and all DU partner programs and locations are regularly reviewed for health, safety, and security, ensuring the safety of our students. The University of Denver has an international travel risk analyst. This is a position who is paying attention to world events and world happenings for all locations of our study abroad students. When something impacts a program location, this travel risk analyst is notified immediately, and we will soon communicate with students directly about relevant and important safety precautions. All study abroad students are covered under a DU insurance policy, which covers anything that may happen to your student while they are abroad. The policy does not cover any pre-existing conditions nor preventative conditions. Your student will be enrolled in this policy by us directly, and for more information on the coverage, you can find on the links here. One resource available to your students is the University of Denver's membership to security agencies. Currently, we contract with International SOS, and information on their services and contact information can be found on this slide. Beginning July 1st, 2024, we will be contracting with a new agency, Crisis 24. The coverage and the services will remain the same. Your student has access to International SOS services until June 30th, so anything needed before they depart, they can utilize International SOS. The University of Denver is still finalizing details with Crisis 24, such as direct contact numbers, membership numbers, etc. Once this information is finalized, your students will be notified of these changes. Up-to-date information on this membership will also be available on the du.edu/international travel website as well. Both of these agencies, either International SOS prior to your student's departure or Crisis 24, which will be available while your student is abroad, these agencies provide medical and travel assistance for your student, whether they need to find an English-speaking doctor in their study abroad location, or they have a medical emergency that requires them to return home. Our agency services can assist with these emergencies. More information can be found on the website listed here. As we near the end of this presentation, I'd like to leave you with a few considerations as your student continues with their journey to study abroad. The first is recognizing that studying abroad is a lot of work. It requires a lot of administrative processes. There are many different deadlines and many different requirements. It's important that your student completes all of these requirements themselves. You can certainly help, but it's really important that you do not do the work for your student. Second is also remembering that studying abroad can be stressful, both during the pre-departure process and also while your student is abroad. There will be bad days, and your student may call you on those bad days. The experiences that students have during their study abroad time is an emotional roller coaster. They experience homesickness and culture shock. They also experience elation and gratitude for experiencing a new culture and living in a new place. Depending on the time frame of when they have these experiences, their emotions will vary. When your student has bad days and they call you, be supportive, but don't panic. Remind them of this emotional roller coaster, and also share that they're likely not the only student experiencing this feeling and this emotion at that time. If you're planning to visit your student during their study abroad time, please be thoughtful of the time frame when you travel. Students should not miss class to spend time with visiting parents or friends or other family members. Try to plan a visit either during a school break that your student has or at the end of their program. Also, please know that most housing arrangements will not allow students to have guests in their apartment or with their host family. Be sure to understand these housing rules and respect the rules of the housing agreement and the program. And finally, remember that there is on-site staff for your student, and they're there to support and help your student through their experience. If your student calls you or emails or texts, sharing difficulties or indicating they need help with something, encourage them to talk with their on-site staff. This is the most efficient and the quickest way to resolve a situation that your student is facing. If they need help with something, they should be working with the staff on site first. More information is available on the website listed here as well as you continue this experience with your student. Thank you for watching this orientation. As I mentioned, it's meant to be a resource and a tool for you to have a better understanding of the process and the time frame and the requirements of your student. More information is available on our website, and our email is listed here as well. Also remember that your student has a direct contact in the Office of International Education, who is a resource and information guide for their program abroad. Thank you and have a great day.